Right, okay, so here I am outside what's now flats in Queen's Road in Croydon, and back in the mid-90s I used to work here when it was like a derelict old hospital, and I've been having a look online and on YouTube, and I've been trying to find some footage of Queen's Hospital Croydon, especially in the years that I used to work around here, but I haven't found any. So I've come out here to do a bit of filming and to sort of go down memory lane and reminisce about when I was working here and what I saw in here. Now, when I used to work here back in the mid-90s, it was the remains of the Queen's Hospital, like I just said, but back in, I think it was 2010, they demolished it and they built these flats here, and the only original part of the building is this square tower here, and all these bits here. This is all new. That was all built new. And yeah, now back then I was working in the West End, and from time to time we used to like go on loan, and as soon as back then I was living in Colliers Wood, any chance to come down and work in South West London anywhere, I'd say yeah, great, because you used to sign on in the mornings, make your way to wherever you're working on loan, and then as long as you got that work all knocked out, that's it. The rest of the day you could do what you like. And I used to be home by about 2 o'clock, so it was great. So I was always volunteering to go on loan down to South West London where I live, because I used to get home early, and one of the places they used to send me to work was in this Queen's Hospital. Now, okay, I'm just going to get a little bit of bearings as to where we are. This, like I said, this is Queen's Road, and this structure, this would have been the original gate to what I knew as a hospital, what I knew as Queen's Hospital, and I'm going to have a big reveal to you later when I tell you what this building used to be, what it was originally built as. And I won't give it away right to the end because I was really surprised, I was really shocked. But I'm just going to pan around here and just going to give you some type of bearings as to where we are. Okay, so down the end of Queen's Road, you've got sort of Fulton Heath is in that direction, Crystal Palace football grounds just along there, Whitehorse Road, and this road runs sort of parallel to London Road, which runs up from Croydon through Fulton Heath and then Norbury up and up towards Streatham. Now, like I said, when I worked here in the mid-90s, this whole site was derelict and boarded up, apart from a structure right over the back of here, right over the back of this site. It was like a 1960s sort of high-rise flats, not too big, I suppose it was about 10 stories high, and it was a doctor's accommodation for what was then called Mayday Hospital. It's now called Croydon University Hospital, which is out on the main road there on London Road. And what I used to have to do was go over to their admin department, pick up the keys and drive over it and let myself in the back of the building. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk actually onto this site now, and this site, the entrance is there, and this site is now like a modern housing estate because they knocked down the whole site back in like the 2010s and they built all these modern flats and like a modern housing estate over the back. So I'm just going to go in the entrance here and walk up through this modern housing estate, and I'll explain how I actually got into the building. Yeah, and I used to drive this is like, used to come up London Road up here, and I used to drive my van in the entrance here and then drive in and then drive all around the site. Okay, so I'm just going to cross the road here. I'll stop here and cross the road and make my way through to this modern housing estate. Right, okay, this is like another shot of the building. As I said earlier, these two wings here, this is new. This is a new structure. They knocked the whole building down and they just kept the square tower. That's the only bit of the original building of what I knew in the mid-90s as Queen's Hospital. Yeah, so what I used to do is, see, all this is all been done up. This is all these grounds. This wasn't here. This was one big derelict site. So all you had was the original main building, and this is where I used to drive my van in here. And you drive up, and then, as I said earlier, I'd drive up to this doctor's accommodation that was situated right at the back of the site. And they had, like I said, they had doctors living there, worked in Mayday Hospital. And this is back in the days where not many people had mobile phones. People still use landlines, so I was forever going in here installing phone lines for these doctors. And their accommodation block was fed off of this main building here. So it meant that I had to get access into this building, and it was all boarded up. All the windows were boarded up. The main front door was all boarded up, and that would have been around, the main door would have been here and here somewhere. And the room I wanted to get to was just to the left of it here. But seeing as the main door was all boarded up and you couldn't get in there, I had to get access to the building right at the back of the building, let myself in through a door, and then walk all the way down the length of the building to get to this room that was here. Now, this is also this is all new here, so it wasn't this isn't the original building, but it was around here somewhere. There was a room, and that's where what we call the main DP for the whole site was. DP's distribution point. It's where we wire up the incoming phone lines to, and that's where the main DP was for the whole site, and that fed the doctor's accommodation. So what I used to do is to drive in here. I used to drive all the way to the back of the site to get to the doctor's accommodation, and then have to drive all the way back again. And I'm just going to make my way to the back of the building, and I'll sort of show you roughly where I had to gain access. Okay, so this is where I've sort of worked out where the back of the original building ended, somewhere around here. And like, as I was saying, I'd drive over to the doctor's flats and then put my oscillator on, the DP there, and then I'd drive back. Now, there was like one way to go in and one way to go out of this place. Apologies if you hear the sawing in the background. They've got a guy trimming some edges, which is good timing. Yeah. So what I would have done is I would have come in through here. This would have I'd have driven in, and I'd have driven all the way down here. And like I said, the road sort of went like this. It snaked in and out of these lots of different outbuildings, and all the outbuildings were boarded up. All the windows, doors, everything were boarded up. No one actually went in there because there was no reason to go in there. And I think the only building that anyone ever went in regularly was this building here. Was the original main building. And I used to look at these outbuildings, and they were lovely. The architecture was absolutely lovely. And I'm going to put up some original pictures of what the outbuildings and the original main building looked like. And then after I'd come back from the doctor's flats, I'd come back here. And like I said before, I had to let myself into, it was around here somewhere, a door that was at the back of the building, and I had to get to a room, empty building that no one had been in for like literally, I don't know, 10, 15 years, something like that. And it was like, I was blinking awful, bearing in mind I was working on my own, and this was a mid-90s, late 90s, and let's make that the idea. I'd have been about in my mid-20s, you know, so still quite young. And I'd unlocked the door here, and of course the building was absolutely pitch black. Absolutely. I mean, the saying, can't see hand in front of you, that was literally, you could not see anything. It was absolutely pitch black. But the electrics were working, and I had to open the door and then like grope round the wall for the light switch, and the wall was horrible. It was all slimy, and I'd have to find the light switch it on, and that lit up the first section. So I'd walk through that section, and then you come to another set of doors and you had the same thing. You had to open the door, grope with your hand round on the wall to switch the light on, and then you lit up the next section. Now there was about 5 or 6 of these sections I had to walk through. It seemed like 500 or 600 because it was a long walk through this horrible sort of dirty derelict building. Not only that, to make things worse, the whole of the floor was covered in like these what looked like old medical records. They were like sort of bits of cardboard, and it looks like someone had emptied out, I don't know, drawers or whatever, and just thrown these medical cards across the floor, or thrown them up in the air. And the floor was about 6 inches to a foot deep with these medical cards, and you had to walk over the top of these medical cards. And I remember going there once and thinking, oh, let me try to see if I can move these cards out of the way, and you just couldn't. There was just too many of them. I'd have been there till midnight doing it. So not only do you have to sort of walk through about 5 or 6 different sections, is walk over the top of these medical cards that were about a foot thick. So it was awful. So anyway, eventually I'd made it through the sort of something that's on video go. I made it to the front of the building, and I'm just going to make my way back around the front here, because the guy doing the strimming, I think he's actually switched it off now, but there's another guy started up a strimmer, yeah, always away. So I'm going to make my way to the front of the building, and it's a lot easier walking there now than it was back then in the mid-90s. So anyway, you get to the front of the building, and it's what used to be the main sort of like entrance hall. That would have been the main entrance, or you walked in through the front door. Obviously you couldn't go through the front door because it was all bolted up. So I make it to the front, and the lights at the front of the building in the front hall weren't permanent. So what they had is these like temporary light things set up that you see in building sites or places like houses being refurbished or whatever. These sort of like temporary lights, they're like sort of yellow cables, and you sort of string them around, and it sort of goes like a generator thing when they turn the power off. Well, that's what they had in this front hallway thing, was these temporary lights strung around the walls, but they were really, really dim. And this front hallway, it was, which would have been, around there somewhere in the original building, it was all dark and gloomy, and there was this huge staircase that led up from the ground floor up to the first floor, and the first floor had no lights. It was all dark and it was gloomy, it had loads of shadows, and it was really creepy. Of course, bearing in mind I'm there working on my own, and it wasn't very nice. And sometimes I had to sort of like wait around, because anyone who's worked on telephone lines knows nothing runs smoothly. There's always problems, there's always faults, there's always things you've got to deal with. And this site was actually what they called EO, which is exchange. Only means there's a direct link between here and the exchange. It doesn't go for a cab or anything like that. It's a direct link. It's called EO, and it's fed off a Fulton Heath exchange. And sometimes I had to actually get what they call a co-op with Fulton Heath, and get involved in all that. And so it did mean that I had to wait around. And the room at the front here, which would have been around here somewhere, that had a light in it, a permanent light, so that was okay. So I could switch the light on in there. But I say this hallway thing that was all here, main big hallway thing, that was the creepy part of it. And then sometimes I sort of like wander around. I'd never go up to the first floor because there was no lights up there. It was all dark and horrible. And I used to get, all the times I worked in it, I'm thinking it was probably about 10, maybe 15 times I actually came and worked here over the years. And each time I'd work in it, I'd be in that hallway and I'd be looking around, and I used to get the impression that it wasn't a very nice place. I just get this feeling, I don't know what it was, I don't believe in ghosts and supernatural nonsense and all that type of stuff, but I used to get this feeling that something not good had happened here, something not nice. And I didn't have a clue what this place was, and bearing in mind this is before the internet, so you couldn't Google what was Queen's Hospital Croydon like you can now. And I used to work with this bloke, and he was from Croydon, and I asked him once, and I said, you know that Queen's Hospital? And, oh yeah, I know it really well. I said, what did that used to be? And he said, oh yeah, that used to be a hospital for the incurables. If you had a incurable illness, I've got what we call palliative care now, I suppose. If you had something wrong with you that didn't have a cure, then they put you here. Now, bearing in mind this was the 90s, and I suppose this bloke was, I don't know, his 50s. His memory went back to, say, I don't know, 1950s, 60s. So he remembered it as a hospital for incurables. So I was like, okay, so that's what it used to be. And the next time I worked there, I thought I know what it used to be, a hospital. And then I thought, well, no, hospitals are supposed to be, nice places where you're cared for, where you're cured. Well, it wouldn't have been cured if it was incurable, but yeah, you were, at least, even if you knew you were going to die, they used to care for you, didn't they? Make your life, your last remaining life comfortable. But I always got this, impression that something not right had happened here. See all this is, all this lovely landscape grounds. None of this was here when I worked here. This is all overgrown, derelict. As I'm talking here, I'm going to put up pictures of what it looked like, both when it was built and when I worked here in the 90s. Yeah, so anyway, what happened was, around this time, so it might be like mid to late 90s, they decided, because of health and safety reasons, this building was empty and derelict and falling apart. They decided to make it a two-man job, and it wasn't practical to send me on loan down here anymore, because it either meant sending two of us on loan from the West End, or me, what's called building an assistant, getting someone locally to come, and it just wasn't practical. So they said, oh, forget it. So I stopped working there. Yeah. So, and then that was it. So it's anyway, zip forward, I don't know, 10 years, something like that. The internet was a thing, and you could actually Google and see, and all of a sudden, I think I drove past here once. And oh, there's that old Queen's Hospital I used to work. Let me Google it and find out what it was. Well, you can imagine my surprise when I actually found out what this original building was. It was the old Croydon workhouse, and it was Croydon Workhouse, and it was built in around the 1860s. There actually is a thing at the front here that says 1865. There's a bit of stonework on the wall here, on the only existing part of the original building. And I said, oh, it was Croydon Workhouse. Oh, okay. There's a guy who's got a website called workhouses.org.uk, Peter Higginbottom, and it's absolutely fantastic. He does workhouses, schools, old kids' homes and whatnot. Absolutely fantastic. And as I'm reading down, he's saying, it was built in such and such a date, and unfortunately, there's a lot of bad things went on it. It was known for its cruelty and its abuse. And there was a guy who was here, stayed here as a kid, and he was put here, I think he was about 4 years old or something, and he was here for about 10 years, and the cruelty and the abuse was so horrific that he actually ran away from the workhouse. And years later he wrote his autobiography, and he related some of the awful things that went on here. It was horrific. And when I put this up on YouTube, I'm actually going to put a link at the bottom in the description about his audio about some of the experiences he had here as a kid, and it was absolutely awful. And all of a sudden I'm like, do you know something? All the times I worked in here, I knew something bad had gone on it. I just got this sense that something, it just was not right. It didn't sit right with me that it was a hospital that was caring and nice. I always got the impression something bad had happened here, and I know now something bad did happen here. And I think the guy's name was Saunders, Len Saunders or Sanders, something like that. Anyway, I'll put a link down the bottom. Yeah, and that's it. That's what this place was. And I never knew it back then. It was always called Queen's Hospital. I never knew it was the old Croydon Workhouse. I mean, obviously my memory only goes back to the 70s, so I wouldn't have known it. But yeah, that's my memories of working here. Right, so I'm just going to film this here. Now, this would have been the original entrance gate, I should imagine, to the workhouse. Yeah. Which is here. There it is there. I mean, just imagine having to come in here. Just imagine having to come through these gates. I mean, you'd have to be pretty desperate to come in here, wouldn't you? I mean, there's a lot of people just, I mean, I'd just rather starve to death than go in the workhouse, wouldn't they? But just imagine how awful it must have been coming through these gates. I mean, workhouses were really brutal places. Families were split up, men in one part, women in the other part, children in another part. I think women were allowed to keep their children up to the age of, I think, about 2 or 3, I think. And if they were older than that, they went into a separate part. You know, almost treated like they were prisoners, made to wear awful, uncomfortable uniforms, fed vile food, like they were in prison. They were being punished for being poor. Horrible days, yeah. And, you know, weren't it great in the good old days brigade, going on about how great it was? Well, bloody well weren't. Not if you were like part of the working class, which the majority of the population was. You had it tough, you had to work. If you didn't work, you starved or came here. But yeah, that was this is the original entrance gate. So it's these gates, and the original square Belvedere Tower. That's only the original part of the building left. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's it.